start off with employer impacts and the taxable wage base. As the speaker pointed out, we got taxable wage base is the amount of money that employers pay UI tax on. So if you have an employee who's making $20,000, UI tax applies to the first $10,000 under current law. That $10,000 was increased to $8,000 last session, and it hadn't increased since 1983, so it's been flat for a number of years. Under the proposal, the taxable wage base will be increased to $13,000 in 11, and then $16,000 in 2012, and it would remain there as long as the UI trust fund is still in the red. Okay? So again, it would be several years at $16,000. Once the trust fund balance returned to black, once it becomes positive, that taxable wage base will then increase annually at the average annual wage growth. Okay, so it's going to be tied to the same index that the maximum income benefit will be tied to. Two exceptions to that. Once the trust fund comes back, is healthy again, and we move from Schedule 5, which is the highest tax rate schedule, down to Schedule 3, that taxable wage base would drop by $2,000.
Could you explain just what schedules are about for those who may not be familiar with that?
Under current law, the unemployment tax rate is referred to as experience rate. All that means is that employers who have laid off, have a recent history of laying off their workers, will pay a higher tax than employers who have had very limited experience with unemployment or none at all. In addition to that, that tax rate schedule runs from 1 to 20. There are 5 separate schedules. And Schedule 1 is the lowest tax rate schedule. Schedule 5 is the highest tax rate schedule. Starting next year, we're going to be at Schedule 5. As the fund returns to health, we will start ratcheting down Schedule 4, Schedule 3, Schedule 2. This proposal says that once we reach Schedule 3, which is sort of the status quo, which is sort of helping with the fund's normal needs in a healthy situation, then the taxable wage base would drop by $2,000. It would drop by an additional $2,000 if and when we reach Schedule 1. We've never been at Schedule 1 before. It's the lowest possible tax rate under current law. But if we did reach that point, the taxable wage base would come down by another $2,000. But this is probably the most significant part of the bill. The speaker mentioned that we got into this situation because the taxable wage base hasn't increased in 1983, but benefits have been indexed to wages. So we have a structural problem with unemployment trust fund. And if you look back historically, from say 2001 forward, even during those years when unemployment was under 3.5%, the economy was healthy, everything was going along fine, the trust fund was paying out more benefits than it was collecting in taxes. So we had basically a structural problem that was just waiting to explode, and when we hit the current recession that we're just starting now to climb out of, that besides that recession, only the structural problem created this crisis in the unemployment insurance trust fund. So this is probably the most significant part of the bill. Two other employer impacts. One is, and the speaker covered this pretty well, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but chronically negative balance employers under this bill, beginning 3 years from now, will be charged an additional 0.5% on the tax rate. These are the employers that basically, on a chronic basis, draw more from the unemployment insurance trust fund than they pay in. Now, this also works hand in hand with the taxable wage base increase. As the taxable wage base increase goes up, we will have fewer negative balance employers because they'll be paying more into the fund. Negative balance employers basically get the maximum rate allowed under the law. So they can't be charged anymore, even though the benefits they're going out to cover employees that they lay off is greater than the amount that they're paying. And the last thing on employment tax is to increase some fines. Fines for this classification, fines for failure to file accounting reports. I won't give you a lot of detail on those. So is everybody okay on the employer? Moving on to employee impacts. Since 1983, the maximum weekly benefits have been allowed to increase annually at the same rate that wages grow. There have also been times when we've stepped up that maximum weekly benefit even above that level. Last session, this maximum weekly benefit was scheduled to go to $438 per week, and he froze it at $425. This was the initial step we took last year to try to address this problem. Under this proposal, the maximum weekly benefit would remain at $425 as long as the trust fund was not as a projected to a positive balance. So as long as we're borrowing money, that $425 would stay at $425. And under the projections we're looking at right now, that would be into 2014. Once the trust fund balance becomes positive in 2015, that maximum weekly benefit would then start to grow the same way it does under current law. It would increase every year at the same rate that wages grow. And the third thing going here is that once Schedule 3 is reached, and this again, once the trust fund is healthy again, and we're going from Schedule 5 down to Schedule 3, which frankly will be well beyond the forecast period we're looking at, which ends in 2018. We're talking about 2020 somewhere. Then the maximum weekly benefit would move to 57% of the average weekly wage. And the intent there is to restore some of the benefit that's been lost to employees who try to deal with this problem. Eventually they would be able to get back to where they were prior to this problem together. The next two sections deal with civil misconduct and gross misconduct. Under the bill, under current law, at the Commissioner's discretion, an employee who has been discharged for misconduct has to wait from between 6 to 12 weeks in order to begin collecting their benefit. If they remain unemployed for 6 months, they collect the full amount they're entitled to, but they have to wait for that period before they begin to collect. The bill does two things in regard to civil misconduct. The first is to expand that waiting period, again at the Commissioner's discretion from 1 to 15 weeks. The second provision, which would actually affect the benefits received by someone discharged from misconduct, would be to limit the benefit duration to 23 weeks. Normally, you can collect for 26 weeks. Under this provision, your benefit would be limited to 23 weeks. So this would affect the employees in terms of how much money they actually collect, but only if they remain unemployed for the full 6 months. Otherwise, the weekly benefit would be affected. If they return to work serving 26 weeks, they wouldn't be affected. It would be the same as under current law. Gross misconduct, what the bill would do is ask the Commissioner to draft some statutory language that would expand the definition of gross misconduct so that some of the more egregious cases that currently fall into civil misconduct would actually result in disqualification from receiving benefits. Under current law, the gross misconduct standard is pretty high. If you don't break the law, you're still an employer. Do something that's fairly serious in order to trigger that gross misconduct penalty. So this would maintain that penalty in place, but expand the definition a little bit. So some of the more egregious cases that currently fall into civil misconduct would actually result in disqualification benefits.
Mark, given the noise of the
Okay.
Also, a question on expanding gross misconduct. It says in your one page of the Commissioner will draft a rule. What direction that's going to go? Is that pretty well settled out?
No, I think that actually under the current draft, it wouldn't be something the rules would deal with. The Commissioner would come back with a proposed legislation.
Okay.
And look at the legislation, take a look at that point. And the second part of your question is?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. This next part,